Hi guys, it's Webby again. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Toyotacorolla ZR Hybrid. So something a little bit different today. I have been driving some different cars recently. You may have seen my video of the Jaguar I-Pace, which is obviously fully electric. So today we're looking at something that's hybrid. Now I'm personally quite keen to see how this car goes and compares to my own car, which is a Golf Turbo Diesel, because obviously this hybrid is meant to have really fantastic fuel economy, which is something that obviously I look for, particularly in something like my Golf. So it's interesting to see what it's going to compare like. Now in terms of Corolla, what you see behind me is obviously something quite different to what you might be used to. Previously in the past, you wouldn't have used words like interesting, stylish, fun, sporty, engaging, premium, any of those words on the previous generation Corolla, because basically it wasn't. It was just a functional car, pretty uninspiring, pretty dull, bland inside, and just something that, yeah, you wouldn't get excited about, you know, jumping behind the driver's seat and having a drive of. But this new one is quite different. As you can see, you know, looking at the styling behind me, it's a really good looking car. I'm going to show you around the outside in a minute anyway, and you can make your own mind up, but I think it looks really good. So without further ado, let's have a look around this Corolla ZR Hybrid. So like I say, styling wise, it's a really good looking car. Yeah, not words you'd ever think you'd say in conjunction with the words Toyota Corolla, to be honest. The old one was a bit bland and boring. This particular car, so it's the ZR, it's the top of the range, it's got the hybrid engine. It looks particularly good because it's got the black optional roof, which obviously goes quite well against this white paintwork. So it's got a bit of a stormtrooper style thing going on. But yeah, looking at the front, it's very striking. It's got these sort of sharp angles and big grille at the bottom. It's got the LED headlights. It's a really, really good looking thing. Yeah, I know it's hard to believe this is a Toyota, people, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. So the styling sort of carries on. There's no sort of kind of sharp angles, if you like, as in squarish. They're all sort of rounded and really good looking. That follows on around to the back of the car as well. Lots of curves and you got all creases going everywhere. So yeah, it's really sort of quite removed from the previous model. It's got some really sort of nicely designed 18-inch alloy wheels, being the ZR top of the range model, which you would think normally on a car would, you know, affect the ride and the handling and make it sort of quite bumpy. But I've been driving this around since last night, and I can definitely tell you it handles really well. It feels quite sort of sporty and lively, but we'll get to that in a little while when I'll take you out for a drive and tell you what it feels like. But initial impressions on the outside are certainly very good. And so I like the styling. I think it looks really smart and stylish. And if you sat this next to a previous generation Corolla, the differences are absolutely day and night. Yeah, you'd pick this one every single time. So let's have a look at some of the features of the car as we go around, and point out some of the bits and pieces that make up this model. So starting at the front, so we've got things like, we've got front parking sensors, we've got LED headlights, got this nice sort of satin chrome strip all the way around the front grille. So it's quite a stylish looking thing to start with. Coming around the side, as I said earlier, we've got these really nice 18-inch alloy wheels. Hybrid badge there, just to remind you what's under the bonnet. It's got some nice black door mirrors, which again set off nicely against the white paintwork. The black roof comes all the way down this sort of A-pillar here and stops just there. But it almost feels like that it's not paint, it feels like a wrap, but it might be hard to see, but the black is actually metallic as well. And so this is a metallic white, it's called Crystal Pearl. So obviously both of those in the sun sparkle really nicely. Yeah, so it looks particularly good in the sun. At the back you've got this kind of, almost looks like a sort of spoiler on there, and with that shark fin area on top, it looks, yeah, it looks quite purposeful. The rear bumper Again, looks like it's got a sort of sporty feel to it, and the LED rear lights as well. Just set it off really nicely. Now this car I've actually borrowed from Berwick Toyota, so a big shout out to them, and they've lent me the car since last night, and yeah, just a big thanks to them, because it's nice just to sort of get behind the wheel of something different. So before we step inside, just point out you've got things like obviously keyless entry, which is obviously a top of the range thing. It's getting sort of quite standard on cars these days. But yeah, let's jump inside and have a look at the interior and some of the features in there. So coming inside then, the first thing you're greeted with are these really nice sort of sport seats. A lovely mixture of leather and suede. They're really sort of figure hugging as well, they really hold you in. And you've got this lovely aluminium section up here. It really does look like a proper Recaro sort of style bucket seat. They are mega comfortable. On the driver's side, it's got fully electric operation there, which includes lumbar support, which is nice. But let's jump in. So the actual layout, as you can see, is pretty neat. There's not a lot of buttons going on. You've obviously got some here on the steering wheel, across there as well. There's bits and pieces here for the air conditioning. You've obviously got your sat nav screen up the top. There's buttons down the bottom here. So it's all fairly sort of clean looking and simple, which is quite nice. Now what I'll do is I'll just bring the car into life, just so we can have a look at the dash. So the power button's just down here. And there we are. It's got a little sort of fancy light display, and then everything is switched on, as you can see. It's actually nice and easy to read. Yeah, there's nothing actually difficult about it at all. In the centre there, you've got your trip computer on display at the minute. You've got your rev counter to the left. At the top, you've got a digital speedo, which is nice. And then over to the right hand side, you've got your temperature and fuel gauges. So it's kind of standard stuff, but it's actually nice and easy to use. There's nothing sort of too difficult about it. So the buttons here on the steering wheel operate some of the bits and pieces on the screen. Then you've obviously got volume up and down buttons and phone call and voice control. So that's pretty standard stuff. Coming over to the right hand side, you've got the buttons here for your adaptive cruise control, your distance sensor and your lane keeping aid. The mode button will actually let you swap between sources for your entertainment system, and the arrows will change preset radio stations for you. And obviously, like a lot of cars, no CD player, but that's fine, because who uses a CD player these days? Coming down to obviously the sort of centre section, you've got an electronic handbrake now, and the automatic hold function, which is really nice. I do like that. The buttons in front of the gear stick, you've got that one there for fully electric mode, obviously turning off your traction control, and then you can change your different drive modes. So it's all kind of pretty standard stuff that you get on most cars these days. And just sneaking under here, it's a little bit dark in here, but you can just about see, we've got heated seats left and right. Just under there, you've actually got a wireless charging pad, which you can turn on and off with this little button here, which is quite a neat feature. Coming up a little bit further, then we've got all the buttons for the climate control. If we just bring that into life, again, it's all sort of nice and neat. It's pretty self-explanatory what all the buttons do. Not much different to most cars these days. And then we come up to the entertainment system, which in years gone by has always been a bit of a letdown with Toyota. Because the mapping system hasn't been particularly great, the functions of it have been bad. It's just been pretty poor, to be honest. But nowadays, thankfully, they've actually come to the party and put Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on. But I'll tell you a story about that. It's quite funny. It was hang on, let me just turn the camera around. So in terms of the Apple CarPlay, it is a little bit like, well, it is like most other cars, as in, you turn the Apple CarPlay on in the sat nav unit, and obviously then you make sure it's switched on your phone. But under the armrest you've got a USB point, and I connected my phone to that, thinking that it would just, you know, obviously start working. But whatever I did, I couldn't get it to work, and it was frustrating me a little bit, if I'm honest. And I was thinking, why is it not working? So I did what most people do nowadays. I jumped on Google and just did a bit of, you know, how do you set up Apple CarPlay on a Toyota Corolla? And it turns out that I didn't realise there's actually another USB point kind of slightly up and under the dashboard, which is the only point you can use for connecting your phone if you want to use, you know, CarPlay or Android Auto. And once I plugged it into there, absolutely fine. But it just wasn't obvious. But yeah, like I say, ever since then it's been absolutely fine. I always use Apple CarPlay, probably like a lot of people, because I prefer to use, you know, Google Maps. I like to listen to Spotify, you know, music or podcasts while I'm driving, because most inbuilt systems in cars these days aren't as user-friendly as Apple CarPlay. But that's just a minor gripe, because it wasn't obvious. That's what you need to do. But I'm guessing when you buy a car, the salesman would obviously point that sort of thing out to you. But yeah, it's all sorted after that. I was quite happy, and obviously it integrates perfectly well, because that's what Apple CarPlay does. Oh, jeez. A lot has been talked about with the rear of this car, in the fact that there's not much, you know, leg room, headroom, and that type of thing. And bear in mind, I'm only 5'7", so the driving seat is in my position. And yeah, I've got a little bit of leg room. I'm not too uncomfortable. But if there was a taller driver and a taller passenger, it would be really, you know, really uncomfortable for the person sitting in the back here. I don't know whether you noticed as well, when I was getting in the car, the actual aperture here isn't very big, so you actually struggled to get in here in the first place. And if that seat was pushed back further, you'd really struggle to actually get yourself in the car, you know, to start with. But you know, yeah, once you're in, it's comfortable. The seat materials, the leather and the suede, obviously carry through from the front of the car, which is nice. We've got air vents down here in the centre, so the air conditioning comes through from the front of the car. We've got a nice armrest here with cup holders, which is obviously good for rear passengers, kids, what have you. So yeah, I mean, it's a nice enough place. The seats are comfortable. You don't feel like you're sitting on a bench seat. It's almost, you know, individual seats for the outer two passengers. The middle might be a bit uncomfortable, whoever's got that seat. But yeah, generally as a place to be, it's quite nice. Yeah, there's not heaps of headroom, but again, it's plenty. It would be nice, I think, if you could have a full glass sunroof, because that would let a lot more light into the car. Because whenever you get one of these sort of dark headlinings, it does sort of bring the roof down. It sort of makes you feel a bit claustrophobic inside. But yeah, generally, not a bad place to be. You've got some more cup holders up here as well. But yeah, I'd hate to sit behind someone who was 6'2". So under the bonnet of the Corolla, so as we know, it's a hybrid system. So you've got a 1.8 litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, obviously linked up to the hybrid battery system. And I have to say, they work really, really well together. So the integration of the batteries with the actual petrol engine itself is really smooth. When it switches from just being electric to actually, you know, getting sort of full hybrid of the petrol engine and the batteries, it's so smooth you really can't notice it. And it will always go into EV mode when it can. So if you're going down a hill, it will kind of switch the engine off, but it will come into life instantly. It's really impressive to say notice it, but you don't notice it, if that makes sense. So yeah, the smoothness of the engine and the powertrain is really impressive, because there's nothing worse than, you know, sort of having this big jolt of like switching between the two and, you know, being sort of an unpleasant experience. But it's actually really, really nice. And when it's in electric mode, it's so quiet. So if you're creeping around a car park in your supermarket, and you know, you have to be careful, because, you know, pedestrians won't necessarily notice you. Now they'll step out not realising there's actually a car there, because it's so quiet. But yeah, it's weirdly sort of like addictive. If anyone's ever driven a hybrid or an electric car, you'll know exactly what I mean by that. Because yeah, obviously, you know, electric cars for most people aren't normal, or even hybrids aren't normal. So once you actually drive one of these things, it's weirdly addictive. Yeah, before you start thinking Webby's sort of lost the plot, have a drive of one and you'll see exactly what I mean. So let's go for a drive now then. So we've had a look around the outside, shown you bits and pieces inside, but obviously a lot of what this car is about is going to be what it's like on the road. You know, what's the fuel economy like, how does it handle, what's the ride like, and just general bits and pieces like that. So let's go for a drive and see what we think. So when you push the start button, it beeps at you. That's it. You see some lights and bits and pieces on the dash, but the engine doesn't actually start up as a normal car would. So pop it in drive and off we go. Okay, so I actually do quite like the fact that it starts off in fully electric mode. But yeah, it's eerily quiet. It is a strange sensation if you've not driven one before. Good for not disturbing your neighbours if you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to work though, and that would be very handy. You're outside, the transition between electric and petrol is so smooth, it's barely noticeable. One of my only gripes about the whole sort of drivetrain situation is I'm not really a big fan of CVT gearboxes, because they tend to just kind of rev really high when you put your foot down, and then sort of the engine catches up with the gearbox, if that makes sense. This isn't too bad, it doesn't get too noisy. You tend to notice as you're driving along a little bit more sort of tyre noise than anything else, because when the engine's in electric mode, obviously it's really quiet, so you don't hear that sort of engine noise. But I'm driving around these roads in Victoria, which I'm not in a lockdown zone, just in case anybody's wondering, because where I live is outside of the lockdown zone. But yeah, there's some real sort of bumpy roads, and when you hit a sort of a bump in the road, it doesn't really come through to the cabin that much. So they've done a really good job of tuning the suspension so that it doesn't sort of shake your bones in your body every time you go over a bump in the road or something like that. So the engine's now kicked in, didn't notice it at all, so it's really impressive. Oh, actually another thing that has annoyed me about this car, and I think, I don't know if you can switch it off or not, but every time you go past like a school zone, it comes up with this little warning, warning you come into a school zone, or warning you're leaving the school zone, or you're coming up to a railway crossing and stuff like that. And I know some people might like it. I think it's really annoying, because I was on the phone last night in a phone call, and chatting away, and all of a sudden it kept coming up with these little messages, oh, you've entered a school zone, you've left the school zone, and yeah, it was bloody annoying, if I'm honest. And the person I was talking to was like, what was that? I was like, it's the car talking, I don't know what it's doing. I tried looking through the system to try and switch it off, but I couldn't find what it related to. Maybe you can switch it off, I don't know. But if you could, and I was going to own one of these, I would definitely switch it off. But again, that's just me. And one other minor gripe, and this is, you could be sort of thinking I'm a little bit picky here, but if you leave a window open, you can't lock it with the key. Like some cars where you can just press and hold the lock button and it will shut your windows for you. I couldn't get it to do that, but I think that's just a Toyota thing, because when I worked for Toyota 6 years ago, you couldn't do it back then either. So yeah, maybe that's just something they haven't caught up with. I'm used to that on my Golf, so it's just those little things that you get used to on your car, I suppose. But I do like, one thing it has got is the head-up display. obviously directly in front of you, so you can see your speed. There's like a little meter to tell you whether you're being economical or using, you know, lots of power from the engine, and it also shows up the speed limit of the road you're driving on, because the cameras behind the rear view mirror have got the traffic sign recognition, which is obviously quite common on cars these days. And along with that, you've obviously got all the other standard safety stuff. So you've got autonomous braking, you've got adaptive cruise control, you've got blind spot monitor, it's got rear cross traffic alert. So it's got all sort of the good stuff you want on a car nowadays. And in fairness, you know, it seems to be becoming more and more standard. So it's more of a surprise when cars don't have those features now. In terms of economy, this little sticker on the window says it's meant to average 4.2 litres per 100 kilometres, and the dash at the minute is telling me I'm doing 5.4, which I don't think is too bad actually, because I've never driven a car that actually meets what it says on the sticker. It's just one of those things, no car seemed to do it. But you know, 5.4 isn't too bad, to be fair, and that's been a mixture of around town, it's been freeway driving, it's been these country roads that I'm driving on today. For a petrol engine, I think that's really good. It's actually, to be fair, exactly the same figure as I get out of my turbo diesel Golf. You know, diesels are always meant to be, you know, the most fuel efficient cars to buy, but this sort of goes to prove that you don't have to buy a diesel and fill up at the smelly pump at the servo. In terms of driving, I know I've been waffling a little bit. The drive is really nice. Like I say, it's comfortable. These seats are amazing. The steering's really nice. It's light enough that it doesn't feel like you're struggling to sort of turn corners and things. But there's a nice amount of weight to it. Obviously, it's electrically operated, you know, power steering. But it's lovely to drive, and you know, you turn into a corner, and you know, it just follows exactly where you want it to go. The other thing it has got in here, which I forgot to mention earlier, when we're having a look around the inside of the car, it's got a fantastic JBL audio system. So you've got speakers everywhere. It's really clear sort of sounds from the music. You've got good bass in my car, so I'm really pleased that it's got a good speaker setup. So there you go, there's the video of the Toyotacorolla ZR Hybrid. Hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly learnt a lot about the car, having spent a day or so with it. It's quite an impressive car actually, much better than I thought it was going to be. Certainly a massive improvement on the predecessor. So yeah, it's a really good package. So great fuel economy, comfortable, full of tech, exactly what you want in a small modern car these days. So if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like. If you want to see more videos and be notified of when they're coming out, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and then you'll find out when the next video goes live. So thanks very much for joining me. I've got to give it another shout out to Berwick Toyota for lending me the car again, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.